Our last meeting, we had run out of time. We will have a hard stop on this meeting at 5:25 to allow the committee members to proceed to the council retreat that's taking place at 5:30. So we'll try to be expedient here with our items. The first item on our agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting from 6:14 of '22, copies of which are in the packets. Any revisions or corrections to the minutes that anyone noted? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Lukens, second by Dinny. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, so the minutes are approved. Item number 2 is discussion and possible action regarding a budget modification related to a salary study. And you'll recall in our previous discussions, we had talked a little bit about doing some market study because the marketplace for wages and the inflation in the economy is changing so quickly. And so we had had just a little snippet from the HR committee and from Tony Vanderboom before she left about the possible need for this. And yeah, I think at that time we had talked about the fact that we were not real excited in funding this with ARPA. And so we had asked Marianne maybe to think about some additional fund sources where we could fund this from, you know, whether we could fund it from vacancies or what, and see if there's an alternative. So do you want to walk us through that a little bit, Marianne? And if we need to, we can bring Ann up if they have questions for
Sure.
HR.
I do think, if you recall, the HR for the hiring of HR Gov to recruit for the new HR director is coming out of the HR department's budget. I know with that vacancy of the HR director, they also are considering hiring professional assistants for some of the union negotiations. Is that right, Ann? So that will probably, exhaust any extra, because there was quite a bit of a cushion in that budget, in the 2022 budget. So I feel uncomfortable saying that we could use the HR budget for any of this study. I do think, we have been experiencing vacancies throughout the city, and we have historically returned money for to the general fund. Obviously, the 2021 results was about $1 million back to the general fund. So, if you wanted to take it out of anticipated savings and basically apply reserves, you could do that, or you could rank it for ARPA.
Well, and that's one thing we had maybe talked about as well, is if we could look at it through surplus versus ARPA. I think we're looking for projects that really are public-facing, that really touch a lot of our residents and, larger sections of the population than trying to use it internally. And, knowing now we've seen some early cost projections on what the water plant long-term solution may cost, I think that we may have to think about how much ARPA we have left and how much of it we may need to get that long-term solution in play without a ton of borrowing that's going to affect the ratepayers. So I think it would behoove us to slow down a little bit on ARPA until we know a little bit more about what's coming from the Water Commission and look for other sources. Committee, what do you think about surplus for something like this? Go ahead, Carol.
I agree. I like that idea because I've just received some feedback too from residents on just, funding in general, ARPA funding, and echoing what you said about that being used for other things that citizens can really readily see. So,
okay. Anyone else have comments on? Go ahead, Sarah.
I guess I was wondering how much do we have in surplus right now?
So,
reserves?
boy, we have, when I started the PowerPoint, I didn't bring it with me. I apologize. But, we've been having our reserves go up every year. Probably have gone up $6 million in the last 5 or 6 years due to continued surpluses. So we do have sufficient funds on hand to finance. And again, we're looking at a one-time cost. So I do think, if you wanted to make that decision, I would feel comfortable with that.
Okay. Go ahead, Doug.
Will we know what the approximate cost of this is going to be, or is it we won't know until we get the RFPs back?
I think that's true. We won't know.
They were looking to do more of a tailored scope on the study, which I think Tony mentioned drives up the price a little bit because they were looking to tailor their comparables a little bit to get a more accurate depiction of true comparables. versus things in the private sector that may not necessarily match.
Well, on the other hand, it's less in scope than our last study, because our last study went through all of our job descriptions and reevaluated those, looked at some other aspects as far as, ratings and things like that. And tried to put people into individual classes in the salary study, and I believe this is to, basically
Just
just
kind of
look
true
at
up
the
the
market.
economics of, okay, that makes a little more sense. Michael has a question, and then
Yeah,
Sarah.
actually, I was just going to make a statement.
ahead.
As for the cost, I think when we discussed this in HR, we, the high, because this RFP is not as comprehensive as Mary Ann said, as our previous salary study, we're just looking at the market rates and not doing all of the wages and steps and all the steps and levels and things like that. So the 80,000 would be the high end of things, like if it was a more comprehensive study, and then the 40,000 would probably be what a basic market study would be. I think we're going to fall somewhere in the middle because the RFP is asking for a tailored study based on surveys and not using existing Bureau of Labor statistics.
Okay. And so then if we were going to, right now, it looks like the ask is to approve the release of the RFP and to fund it to a point. Would your ask be that we approve funding up to that estimate? So approve funding for the study up not to exceed 80,000?
Right.
Because that was
So-
our top end?
So I guess
Sarah?
I would move to approve funding up to 80,000 for a market study.
Okay, we have a motion by Watson. Is there a second? Second by Martins. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
That motion carries.
And I guess in the motion, I didn't specify the reserves, but I guess that's implied. Be
Okay.
funded from the reserve.
Okay?
Yep.
Yep. Oh,
Thank
yes,
you.
from surplus. Okay, so then item number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding budget modification related to a mid-year cost of living adjustment. And so this also is coming to us from the HR committee. Anything on that, Mary Ann, that you wanted to walk us through?
I don't really have anything to add. This, again, would come, is proposed by the HR director, would come out of last year's profits. This will have an ongoing impact. I think, when Tony put this together, she felt like this would provide relief to some of the competitive market that we're experiencing today and, help retain employees, and that it would reduce the impact of the salary study in the future. So,
So if we're looking at a mid-year adjustment of approximately 115, would it be reasonable then to assume that our annual impact that we would create going forward is somewhere between 230 and 250?
Yes.
Per year? Okay. Members, questions on that? Sarah?
So the adjustment would be 2% at the
Yes.
mid-year? Okay. And then is there forecasts of going forward? I mean, how is the adjustment sort of indicated in, because like it said here, inflation's at around 8%.
right, I
So for
think.
the next fiscal year, will it be higher than?
Well, it could be, we have, excuse me, experienced, anytime we have a salary study, typically we wait longer between our salary studies, but when we have salary studies, there's always a, relatively significant implementation cost. This one is after 3 years versus, we've had them, I don't know what the span has been between market studies, but they are usually way longer than 3 years.
I feel like they were 7 to 10. This last
Yeah.
one we did was a long time coming,
I
and we
feel-
were
yeah.
way behind.
I feel like it was
Way behind.
at least
That's why
10
we ended up
years.
with a 3-phased implementation, because
Right, and I was going to point to
the
that.
bite to do it all at once was so much that it was way more than we could pass along to the levy in 1 year. So, maybe now doing this sooner is actually going to create less pinch points than, had we left things get more out of hand than they already are. So, economically speaking. Go ahead, Doug.
Tony was negotiating with the transit union prior to leaving. Has that been completed?
Yes.
That is wrapped up, okay.
So there's another number that potentially go on top of that.
Right.
Do we know what it is?
Well, this.
Is that? Okay.
Okay.
It's not a
Not
public
approved yet?
number at this
All
time.
right.
Okay. All right. So do we have a motion then to approve the mid-year cost of living adjustment funded through surplus? Is there a motion for that? Motion by Denny, is there a second? Second by Lukens. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries as well. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action regarding creating an extended retirement notice incentive. And you have some information in your packets that's come to us from the police department. They do not only have a need to recruit to replace retirements, but there's also value to be had when there's the benefit of a lengthy advance notice, time to train new people, time for outgoing people to work with new people. And so you see here what has come forward from the department and from the HR committee to create an incentive for people to give extended notice so that succession planning can be undertaken. What are your thoughts on this? And it looks like the recommendation from HR was to approve. Let me switch over here. Go ahead,
Do
Doug.
we have any idea how many this could possibly be affected? Are we going to look at another budget amendment to account for all of the retirements?
I don't really know how many retirements we have pending in 2022 that this would impact.
Their memo says they expect 3 to 5 more by
Okay.
January.
Okay.
So 3 to 5, at least 3 to 5.
So we potentially have a 6-month notice already in place? Or would we allow someone who's already given notice to extend in order to collect this, extend 6 months?
Come on up, Ann, maybe give us some insight on what accommodations we might make for people who've already notified.
Yeah, actually, we do have 2 people who have given a 6-month notice. You would have to grandfather them. Out of those 2, there is a member of a union where we're going to be negotiating with. So again, that we need to take that into consideration if we want to grandfather and do a MOU to go backwards, if that's is part of the negotiations.
Okay. All right. What are your thoughts, committee? I mean, we're looking at, in that situation, one person, but, would that accommodation I guess, in effect, would that type of an accommodation as a gesture of good faith between us and the workforce help your forward negotiations on other things?
Could possibly, yes.
Okay.
I think the other thing that we were looking at is, given that this is going to impact multiple departments, we weren't certain that we really needed a budget modification because we wouldn't really know what the financial impact to that specific department is, and perhaps each department would have the capacity to absorb it through, previous vacancies that have already been experienced in 2023.
That's
or
true. I mean, the
in
police department memo
2022.
says they have 4 vacancies right now.
Right.
So that could take up a lot of that slack, too, for us.
Does this apply to department heads and resignations, or is it strictly retirements?
It says retirement only. Is it retirement only, Ann? Retirement.
It's strictly for retirements.
So not other separations.
I think it's worth doing. I'd motion that we grant the extended retirement notice incentive.
Okay, motion by Denny. Is there a second? Second by Martins. I think it makes a lot of sense, too. I guess with that motion, do you wish to do an MOU and grandfather the one employee that's affected within the union? Because we could maybe give Ann that direction
Well,
right now, too.
Well, I guess
I mean,
part,
Or would you need that now?
I would prefer to put that as a point of negotiation, because you would want to put that as a bargaining item for the unions first.
Okay, so we'll hold on that, and you let us know.
Okay.
if we need a separate agenda item for that in the future.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
so we'll hold on that for now. Sarah?
So the motion is to approve a $2,000 payment for any early retirement notice? of
Yes,
6 months?
incentive for 6 months' notice, yes.
2,000. And it would be represented and non-represented employees? Right?
It appears so, well, yes, because if we're going to do a memo of understanding for the union, then it would include the represented as well.
Going forward.
There would have to be MOUs in order for that to happen, but it's, yeah, there was.
It looks like there's a provision for it, though.
provision for that.
Yeah, okay. Carol?
So this would be not only for the police department, but other departments as well?
Yes.
All of them, yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? So with a motion and a second on the floor, members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries as well. Last item is discussion and possible action regarding a budget modification for a transit fueling project. And you'll see from the memo in your packets that they began a project that we had previously improved for some underground tank work, and then found out that we had some coupling, piping, and plumbing things that they also need to handle due to some proprietary parts, apparently. So that is outlined in the memo in the packets. Does anybody have questions on that item? That seemed pretty straightforward. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, straightforward maybe, but I mean, I guess we didn't know this, or who services our facility now? Do we have one of these 3 bidders that service this? And, why would it be a surprise? I mean, I'm understanding that part of it.
The tank is above ground, and then the piping that goes under, they weren't able to look at until they actually broke ground on it and started the project and noticed that these were proprietary. And that company's out of business now that makes them. So the entire line needs to get replaced now.
Okay, so we didn't have drawings or anything that our bidders used to bid this? And part of that would be, did one of the higher bidders include that replacement pipe?
The higher bidders wanted to just do it all, and trying to save money, we went with the lower bidder to begin with.
Okay, that's basically my point. I mean, we need to, it's small dollars, but we shouldn't be surprised like this twice, so.
And I think sometimes, depending on the age of the system, there's all kinds of things lurking that a person doesn't realize.
Sure, but
So-
we contractors bid stuff all the time. We need to hold them responsible for understanding what they're bidding. But I would not be opposed to approving this.
Okay, is there a motion then to approve the expense?
I would
Motion by
motion to-
Denny, is there a second? Second by Martins. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None are opposed. That item carries as well. So we were very efficient today. That's our last item, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Watson, second by Lukens. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one ever is. So we will adjourn, and then we will commence the council retreat in the lower level cafeteria at 5:30. So thank you.